The boardroom was empty. Marcus Hale had already signed the last document when the nanny stepped forward, the woman who had been invisible all evening, standing quietly near the door with his daughter's hand in hers. She leaned close, and in a voice meant only for him, whispered a single word. One word. Marcus didn't move. His pen was still in his hand. He had heard that word only once before, in a hospital room, 8 years ago. Who was this woman? Before we begin, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. Marcus Hale did not lose. That was the thing people said about him, not in admiration, the way they talked about athletes or musicians, but in the quieter, more careful way people talked about forces of nature. You didn't admire a storm. You simply got out of its way. Tonight, the storm had just signed a $400 million acquisition deal. The boardroom on the 41st floor was still loud with celebration. Glasses raised, backs slapped, lawyers shaking hands like they'd each personally built something. Marcus stood at the head of the table accepting congratulations with the ease of a man who had done this many times before, because he had. Composed. Unhurried. The kind of calm that other men in that room had spent entire careers trying to buy. He said the right things. Smiled at the right moments. And inside, he felt absolutely nothing except the clean, quiet satisfaction of a task completed. He was good at this. He had made himself good at this. Near the far end of the room, almost against the wall, stood a woman he barely registered. Elena. His daughter's nanny. She had arrived an hour earlier with 7-year-old Lily, because Marcus's ex-wife had a conflict and the babysitter cancelled, and this was the kind of logistical problem that his assistant solved without bothering him. Elena was holding Lily's hand. Lily was wearing her pink coat and eating a breadstick from the catering table, watching the grown-ups with the patient boredom of a child at an adult event. Marcus glanced at them once, Lily's fine, good, and returned to the conversation in front of him. Guests began filtering out. Handshakes became shorter. The room started emptying the way rooms do after deals close, quickly, like everyone remembered somewhere else to be. The catering staff moved through collecting glasses. The lawyers packed their briefcases. The CFO, Raymond, clapped Marcus on the shoulder one final time before heading for the elevator. Marcus stayed. He always stayed until the room was his again. He was looking down at the signed document, his signature, clean and permanent at the bottom of the page, when he heard small footsteps. He assumed Lily. But when he looked up, it was Elena. Lily was still by the window, pressing her nose against the glass to look at the city lights below. Elena had crossed the room alone. She stopped directly in front of Marcus, close enough that he could have taken a step back, and for some reason he didn't. She leaned forward slightly. She said one word. Ashworth. Then she straightened. Her face gave nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no apology. Just a quiet, steady look, the kind that made Marcus suddenly uncertain who was in control of the room. She turned, walked back to Lily, and took the little girl's hand. Come on, sweetheart, she said softly. Time to go home. Lily pressed one more fingerprint into the glass, then turned and followed without question. The door closed behind them. Marcus did not move. His pen was still between his fingers. The signed document was still on the table. The city lights Lily had been watching still glittered 41 floors below. Everything in the room was exactly where it had been 30 seconds ago. Except Marcus. Ashworth. He hadn't heard that word in 8 years. He hadn't allowed himself to think it in nearly as long. It wasn't the kind of word that lived in his professional world, not in contracts, not in boardrooms, not in the carefully managed story of how Marcus Hale had built everything he had. That word belonged to a completely different version of his life. A version he had buried so thoroughly he sometimes convinced himself it had never existed. No one knew about Ashworth. Not his board. Not his lawyers. Not Raymond, who had worked beside him for a decade. Not even his ex-wife, who had known him better than almost anyone. No one alive knew that word in connection to Marcus Hale. He was sure of that. He had been sure of that. He set the pen down on the table. Slowly. Like the room might notice if he moved too fast. His mind pulled up everything he knew about Elena. It took less than 5 seconds. That was the problem, 5 seconds was all it took because that was all there was. She arrived 6 months ago through an agency his assistant recommended. Good references. Quiet. Reliable. Lily liked her. That was the full list. Marcus had never thought to add to it because she was the nanny, one of dozens of support staff his household ran through annually, and Marcus did not invest attention in people who were not relevant to his decisions. He walked to the boardroom door and looked down the hallway. Empty. The elevator had already taken them down. He pulled out his phone. Searched his email for the agency's original message. Found found it. Clicked through to the attached profile. Elena Voss. References attached. He stared at the name. It told him nothing. It felt like a door with no handle. He tried to remember the last 6 months: Elena in the kitchen, Elena walking Lily to school, Elena reading to Lily on the couch, Elena at the door when Marcus came home late. Every image came back exactly the same. Patient, warm, invisible. Someone designed to be invisible. That thought arrived cold and sharp. Marcus closed the email and stood alone in the hallway, the noise of the celebration completely gone now, nothing left but the faint hum of the building's ventilation and the weight of one word sitting in the center of his chest. He had spent 8 years making sure no one could reach that word. He had never thought to check who was already inside his house. He went back to his phone and searched for the agency's number. He would call first thing tomorrow. Get Elena's full name. Her paperwork. Everything. But as he scrolled, one detail stopped him cold. His assistant had recommended the agency. And his assistant had been hired by Raymond. Marcus looked at the signed document one more time. $400 million. The biggest deal of his career. His name at the bottom. It no longer looked like an achievement. It looked like something else entirely. If that ending stayed with you, you're not alone. Drop your theory in the comments. Who do you think Elena really is? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're here when the next chapter drops. This story is just getting started. Marcus didn't sleep. He told himself he would. He went through the motions, changed out of his suit, poured 2 fingers of scotch he didn't drink, sat in the leather chair in his home office with the intention of being rational. He was a man who solved problems. This was a problem. He would solve it in the morning with a clear head and a phone call to the agency. But the word kept coming back. Ashworth. By 1 a.m. he had his laptop open. By 1:15 he had the agency's client portal pulled up and Elena's file on the screen. He read it 3 times. Elena Voss. 32 years old. 5 years of professional nanny experience. 3 references, all verified, all glowing. A clean background check dated 6 months ago. No criminal record. No gaps. No red flags. Marcus sat back and looked at the ceiling. The file was perfect. That was the problem. In his experience, perfect files belonged to 2 kinds of people: those who had lived very careful, very quiet lives, and those who had worked very hard to make it look that way. Elena didn't feel like the first kind. People who lived quiet lives left traces: old addresses, community memberships, parking violations, a gym cancellation. Small digital fingerprints that proved a person actually existed in the ordinary world. Elena's file had none of that. Just the last 5 years, clean and professional, starting almost exactly from nowhere. Like someone who built a paper life recently. Marcus closed the laptop. He didn't want to think about why that might be true, because thinking about it led somewhere he had spent 8 years refusing to go. He picked up his phone and looked at the last photo he had of Lily, taken 3 weeks ago, her 7th birthday. She was wearing a paper crown she'd made herself, slightly lopsided, very proud. She was holding up a slice of chocolate cake with both hands like it was a trophy. Elena was in the background of the photo, blurred, smiling at something outside the frame. He stared at that for a long time. Then he put the phone face down on the desk and finally let himself go back. 8 years ago, Marcus Hale was no one. Not literally, he had a job, an apartment, a name. But he was the kind of no one that the man he later became would have looked straight through at a party. 29 years old, junior analyst at a mid-size investment firm, talent that outpaced his position by several years but hadn't yet found the door. He was hungry in the way that people are hungry when they can see exactly what they want and exactly how far away it still is. Claire was the one good thing that didn't feel like a stepping stone. She was warm in a way Marcus didn't know how to be. Patient with him in ways that frustrated and moved him at the same time. They had been together 2 years when they found out, a Tuesday morning, a test on the bathroom counter, both of them standing in a silence that lasted several minutes. Marcus had done the math immediately. Not the emotional math. The other kind. His career was balanced on a razor's edge. He was being considered for a position that would change everything, and the firm was conservative, image-conscious, managed by men who noticed things like marital status and stability and the appearance of having your life in order. A child, unplanned, unmarried, at exactly the wrong moment. He had told himself it was a mutual decision. He had worked very hard to keep telling himself that. Ashworth was a private clinic 40 minutes outside the city. He remembered the drive. He remembered the waiting room. He remembered that Claire didn't speak on the way home. He had taken her silence as agreement, as both of them processing, together, a decision they had both made. He had called it the right choice for 8 years. He had repeated it so many times that on most days, he nearly believed it. Within a month, Claire was gone. She called it a mutual decision too, in the one conversation they had before she stopped answering. He didn't fight it. He told himself that was also the right thing, that they were both moving on, that it was clean, that sometimes things ended and you let them end and you didn't look back because looking back didn't build anything. He built instead. He built and built and built until the man he'd been at 29 existed only in the legal documents from those years, a name on a lease, on a contract, in a settlement. The clinic had closed 6 years ago. Marcus had confirmed it once, quietly, through a lawyer he no longer used. No records, the lawyer told him. The clinic's files were destroyed in the transition. There was nothing left to find. He had believed that too. He opened the laptop again. He went back to Elena's file. Not the references this time, he went to the administrative section at the bottom. The agency's internal tracking numbers. The case reference codes that meant nothing to most clients, the bureaucratic background noise of a staffing firm's database. He almost missed it. A reference number. 8 digits. Formatted slightly differently from the others, an older system, maybe, or a manual entry. Marcus copied it and opened a different window. He kept meticulous records. It was one of his few personal habits that had survived every version of himself, every old file, every closed case, every document from every lawyer he had ever worked with, archived and indexed in a private server. He searched the number. The result came back in 4 seconds. It was a case file. 7 years old. A legal settlement, small, private, sealed. Marcus remembered it vaguely. A clerical dispute with a former vendor, he'd been told. His lawyers at the time had handled it entirely. He had signed the closure documents without reading them closely because that was what you did with small, quiet things that other people managed for you. He opened the file. He read the summary. Then he read it again. The vendor in question was not a company. It was an individual. A woman. The settlement had included a confidentiality clause, standard language, the kind that meant no one talked and no one looked and the file stayed sealed until someone with the right access number came looking. Marcus stared at the name on the document. He didn't recognize it. He had never heard it before. But underneath the name, in the agency's reference field, was a secondary identifier. A birth record number. And next to it, 2 words that the original filing had apparently never bothered to fully redact. Next of kin. And beneath that, a name Marcus did recognize. A name he hadn't said out loud in 8 years. That reference number just changed everything Marcus thought he'd buried. If you want to know where this leads, and it goes somewhere none of us expected, subscribe and turn on notifications. And drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think Elena really is to Marcus? Marcus made the call at 6 a.m. He didn't use his company's usual security firm. He used a number from a separate phone, a contact he kept for situations that needed to stay quiet. A private investigator named Gareth Cole who charged too much, asked no unnecessary questions, and had never once appeared in any record connected to Marcus Hale. I need a full identity workup, Marcus said. Name is Elena Voss. Currently employed in my household. I need her real background, everything before 6 years ago. And I need it done without her knowing anyone is looking. Gareth said he'd have something within 48 hours. Marcus hung up and went to make breakfast, because Elena arrived at 7:30, and when she did, everything needed to look exactly the same as it always had. She arrived at 7:32. Lily heard the door first. She came running from the kitchen with a piece of toast still in her hand, sock feet sliding on the hallway floor, and crashed directly into Elena's legs. Careful, Elena laughed, steadying her. It was a real laugh, warm, unguarded. The kind you couldn't fake first thing in the morning. Marcus watched from the kitchen doorway. Elena looked up and met his eyes. Good morning, Mr. Hale. Calm. Professional. Completely ordinary. Like the previous evening had simply never happened, like she hadn't stood 2 feet away from him in an empty boardroom and detonated something inside him with a single word. Morning, Marcus said. He turned back to the coffee machine. His hands were steady. He had made sure of that. He stayed home for the first hour, which he almost never did. He sat at the kitchen island with his laptop open and pretended to work, while Lily ate breakfast and chattered at Elena about a dream she'd had involving a dragon who only ate birthday cake. Elena listened with complete attention. She asked follow-up questions. She refilled Lily's orange juice without being asked. She moved through the kitchen like someone who had always belonged there, easy, unhurried, perfectly attuned to Lily's rhythms in the way that only came from genuine time and genuine care. It would have been reassuring, under any other circumstances. Then Lily said, without looking up from her toast, Elena knows lots of stories about people who disappear. Marcus went still. She told me one last week, Lily continued, entirely unbothered. About a princess who went away and nobody could find her, but she left clues so someone would look. Elena was rinsing a glass at the sink. She didn't turn around. It was a fairy tale, Lily added helpfully, as if Marcus had asked. But it was a sad one. Marcus looked at the back of Elena's head. She finished rinsing the glass. Set it in the drying rack. Reached for the next one. She had heard every word. Marcus was certain of that. She didn't react. Not even slightly. Marcus closed his laptop and said he had calls to take upstairs. Elena nodded without turning. Lily waved without looking up. He was at the bottom of the stairs before he realized his coffee was still on the counter, untouched and going cold. The first report from Gareth came that afternoon. Not the full workup, just the preliminary search. A quick summary of what the databases had returned. Marcus read it in his car, parked in the building garage where no one would walk past his window. Elena Voss. 6 years of clean, consistent existence. Employment records, a lease, a bank account, tax filings. Everything a real person needed to have. Everything in exactly the right place, going back exactly 6 years and no further. Before that, nothing. No childhood address. No school enrollment. No pediatric records. No family members listed anywhere. No photographs in any public database. No digital history of any kind, no old social media, no yearbook scans, no community sports rosters. 6 years ago, Elena Voss had simply appeared. Fully formed. Professionally credentialed. Completely convincing. And completely invented. Marcus set the phone down on the passenger seat. He thought about what he knew about Claire. They had been together 2 years. He had met her friends, a few colleagues, her parents twice at dinners that were polite but slightly uncomfortable. He had known she had family, she mentioned a younger sister once, maybe twice, in passing. He hadn't asked. He hadn't been interested in the details that didn't directly involve him. That was the honest answer. He didn't know the sister's name. He had never thought to ask. Now he sat in a parking garage trying to remember if Claire had ever said it, and coming up with nothing, just the vague memory of her mentioning a sister the way people mention weather. Present but unremarkable. Something he had filed away as unimportant and never retrieved. He pulled back up to the house just before dinner. Elena was reading to Lily on the living room couch when Marcus came in. Lily was pressed against her side, one hand gripping Elena's sleeve, completely absorbed. Marcus stopped in the doorway. He wasn't looking for a physical resemblance. He had already decided that was the wrong thing to look for. He was looking for something else. Something harder to name. He found it when Elena turned a page and paused, just for a second, before continuing. A small internal stillness. A moment of composure that looked like calm but might have been something it took effort to maintain. He had seen that quality once before, in someone who was very carefully keeping themselves from showing what they were feeling. He had just never paid enough attention to remember it until now. Elena glanced up and caught him watching. "Long day," she said. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Long day." He went upstairs. Gareth called at 9:15, after Lily was in bed and the house was quiet. "Found something," he said, and his voice had the particular flatness of a man delivering information he knew would land badly. Her prince came back with a match. Sealed juvenile record, different name. "I can't get into the full file, it's sealed tight, but I got the header data." Marcus waited. "The name on the record isn't Elena Voss," Gareth said. "Never heard it before, so it probably doesn't mean anything to you either. But there's a birth record attached." A pause. "Birth city is a place called Heron Falls. Small town, about 4 hours north." Marcus said nothing. "I'm guessing that means something to you," Gareth said carefully. It meant something. Because Marcus remembered, barely, distantly, from a conversation he hadn't thought worth remembering, Claire mentioning where she had grown up. A small town. Quiet, she had said. The kind of place everyone eventually left. He had never asked the name. He knew it now. Heron Falls. The same town. That can't be a coincidence, and deep down, Marcus knows it. Share your theory in the comments below. And if this story has its hooks in you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you're here when the next piece falls into place. The envelope was on his desk when he arrived at the office. No return address. Plain white. His name typed on the front in a standard font, not handwritten, not printed on company letterhead. The kind of envelope designed to look like nothing. Marcus almost didn't open it. He did. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A photocopy, slightly grainy, the kind that came from an old machine or a scan of a scan. It took him 2 seconds to understand what he was looking at. Then his vision narrowed to a single point. It was an intake form. From the Ashworth Clinic. His name was on it. Claire's name was on it. The date was on it. Every detail Marcus had spent 8 years burying was right there on one page, in black and white, sitting on his desk at 9 in the morning like it had always belonged there. He turned the envelope over. Checked the postmark. Different city. Sent 3 days ago. 2 days before last night's call from Gareth. 2 days before he'd even confirmed who Elena really was. This didn't come from her. Someone else had this. Someone else had sent it. And whoever they were, they had timed it, not randomly, not carelessly, but deliberately. Right after the acquisition closed. Right when Marcus was at his most visible, his most celebrated, his most exposed. He sat down slowly. For the first time in a very long time, Marcus Hale felt something that was uncomfortably close to fear. He called his lawyer, David, from a secure line. No details over the phone, just enough to get David in the office within the hour. David listened. He read the document. He set it face down on the table between them and was quiet for a moment that lasted slightly too long. How many people know about this? David asked. Until this morning, Marcus said, I believe the answer was 0. David nodded slowly. If this surfaces publicly, press, a competitor, anyone with a reason to use it, the acquisition will be challenged. The board has a morality clause. It's broad and they know it. He paused. They would remove you within the week, Marcus. Possibly faster. Marcus said nothing. The deal you just spent 3 years building, David continued quietly, would be the thing that makes it worse. The timing, the celebration, it becomes the story. I understand. Do you know who sent this? Marcus looked at the envelope. Not yet. David left with the document in a sealed folder and a clear instruction, find out who sent it before they send it anywhere else. Marcus sat alone in his office for 4 minutes. Then he straightened his jacket, picked up his phone, and texted his driver to go home first. He needed to see Elena. He framed it as a routine check-in. Parents did that, stopped home unexpectedly, said they were passing by, made it normal. Elena was in the kitchen helping Lily with a school project when Marcus walked in. Colored paper. Glue. A poster about the water cycle that had somehow become mostly a collage of clouds with faces. Hey, Marcus said from the doorway. Just grabbing something. Elena looked up. There's coffee if you want it. Come. Easy. The same woman who had handed him a live grenade in a boardroom 2 nights ago was now offering him coffee in his own kitchen like nothing in the world was wrong. He watched her help Lily straighten a crooked cloud cutout. Patient hands. Full attention. He tried to find the angle, the performance, the calculation, something that proved she was playing a role. He couldn't find it. Either she was very good, or she wasn't performing at all. And Marcus wasn't sure which answer frightened him more. He poured the coffee he didn't want and stayed near the counter, running a low-stakes conversation about Lily's school project, watching Elena's face for anything, a slip, a tell, a moment where the warmth dropped and something colder looked back at him. It never came. Then Lily looked up from her poster, tugged Elena's sleeve, and said, Are you going to leave like my mom did? The kitchen went quiet. Elena stopped moving. Just for half a second, the same small stillness Marcus had noticed before. Then she looked at Lily with an expression that was completely unguarded and said, softly, I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Lily nodded, satisfied, and went back to her clouds. Marcus set down his coffee cup. Very carefully. His daughter had just asked the woman he was investigating whether she was going to abandon her. And the question had landed in the room like something nobody was supposed to say out loud, raw and simple and too honest for the conversation it had interrupted. He looked at Elena. She looked back at him. Just briefly. Her expression didn't accuse him of anything. It didn't need to. Lily had already said it. He went upstairs. Sat on the edge of his bed. Stared at the wall. The problem was becoming clear in a way he didn't like. He couldn't remove Elena. Not yet. If she and the person who sent the envelope were connected, if they were moving together, coordinated, building toward something, then removing her without understanding the full picture would be the wrong move. It could accelerate whatever was coming. It could make him look reactive, guilty, exactly what someone was trying to make him look. He needed to understand who sent the envelope before he made any move at all. His phone buzzed. Gareth. Marcus answered before the second vibration. I have the name, Gareth said. Her real name. The one on the juvenile record. Marcus waited. Mara Ashby. Gareth spelled it out. Ring any bells? It didn't. Marcus had never heard it. I figured, Gareth said. So I ran the surname. Ashby isn't common in Heron Falls, there's not many families. But there's one that shows up consistently in older records. A pause. Ashby was the mother's maiden name. Of a family with 2 daughters. Marcus stood up from the bed. The older daughter changed her name when she moved away, Gareth continued. Younger one disappeared from the records about 6 years ago and resurfaced as Elena Voss. The room felt very still. The older daughter, Marcus said. His voice was steady. He had no idea how. What was her name before she changed it? Gareth told him. And Marcus understood, all at once, in one cold, quiet second, exactly who had been living in his house, reading bedtime stories to his daughter, and waiting. Mara Ashby. Claire's sister has been inside his home this whole time, and someone else still has that document. Drop your theory in the comments. And if you need to know what happens next, subscribe and turn on notifications. This story is about to get much more complicated. Marcus waited until Lily was at school. He sat at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee, one for him, one he placed across from him without asking, and when Elena came in from dropping Lily at the front gate, she stopped in the doorway and looked at the cups. Then at Marcus. Then she came in, set her bag down, and sat. Neither of them pretended this was a normal morning. Mara, Marcus said. She didn't flinch. Didn't deny it. Just wrapped both hands around the coffee cup and looked at him steadily, the way someone looks when they have been waiting a long time for a conversation to finally begin. How long have you known? She asked. Does it matter? A pause. No, she said. I suppose it doesn't. Her name was Mara. Claire's younger sister. 28 years old. She had been 10 when Claire left Heron Falls for the city, old enough to remember her sister clearly but young enough that they had spent most of their adult lives in different worlds. She had tracked Marcus down 14 months ago. Taken the nanny position 6 months after that, after the previous nanny left and the agency opening appeared like something she chose to believe was a sign. She told him this quietly. Without drama. The way people tell true things they have rehearsed many times. Marcus listened. Claire never got past it, Mara said. I know you probably told yourself she did. That she moved on. That whatever happened between you two was something you both left behind. She looked at the coffee cup. She didn't leave it behind. She carried it every single day. Marcus said nothing. She had good years and bad years. Mostly bad ones. She stopped trusting people, stopped trusting herself, really. Mara's voice stayed even, which somehow made it worse. She died 18 months ago. Complications, the doctors said. Nothing they could point to exactly. She was 34 years old. The kitchen was completely silent. Marcus thought about a Tuesday morning, 8 years ago. A bathroom counter. The drive to Ashworth. Claire's silence on the way home, a silence he had interpreted as shared grief and had never once revisited to check whether he'd gotten that right. He had never called to check if she was okay afterward. Not once. I just wanted you to know, Mara said. That's all I came for. I wanted you to hear the word that mattered. I wanted you to know that someone remembered what you did, and what it cost her, and that it wasn't small and it wasn't clean and it didn't just disappear because it was inconvenient for your career. She looked at him directly. I said the word. That was the plan. I didn't come here to destroy you. Marcus believed her. He believed her completely, and the relief of having an explanation, a painful, human, comprehensible explanation, was so immediate that he almost didn't recognize it as relief. It just felt like the ground becoming solid under his feet again. He understood. He knew who she was and why she had come and what she wanted. He reached for what he knew how to do. I can help you, he said. Financially. Whatever Claire left behind, debts, arrangements, anything that needs. Mara looked at him. It wasn't anger. It was something quieter and more permanent than anger. No, she said. Mara. I don't want your money. She said it simply, the way you say things that don't require argument. I want you to carry it. The way she carried it. That's all I ever wanted. She stood up. Picked up her bag. Took her resignation letter from the front pocket and set it on the table between them, a single folded page, prepared in advance, as if she had always known this was how the conversation would end. Marcus looked at it. He didn't pick it up. I'll give you good references, he said. It was a stupid thing to say. He said it anyway. Mara looked at him one more time, not with hatred, which would have been easier, but with the particular exhaustion of someone who has stopped expecting better and simply accepts what is, and walked out. Marcus sat at the kitchen table for a long time after the front door closed. The second coffee cup was still full. Still warm. He thought, it's over. He thought, I know what happened now. I know who she was and why she came and what she wanted. It's finished. He thought, this is the thing I have to carry now. This is the shape of it. He told himself that was enough. That understanding the cost was a form of payment. That Claire's sister had delivered her message and left and the chapter was closed. He almost believed it. Lily came home at 3:15 and went straight for the kitchen in the way she always did, looking for Elena, already talking before she'd fully come through the door. She stopped. She looked at the empty kitchen. Then at Marcus, who was still at the table, still in the same place he had been when Mara left 4 hours ago. "Where's Elena?" Lily said. "She had to go," Marcus said. "She won't be coming back." Lily was quiet for a moment. She processed this the way children process loss, quickly on the surface, slowly underneath. "Did she leave because of me?" "No," Marcus said. "It had nothing to do with you." Lily thought about this. "Then, she left something for you. Before I went to school. She put it in my backpack and said you'd know what it was." Marcus frowned. "She gave it to you this morning?" Lily was already unzipping her bag. She pulled out a small white envelope, no name on the front, and held it out to him. "She said you'd understand it." Marcus opened it. Inside was a photograph. Small, printed on ordinary paper, like something copied from an original. He had never seen it before in his life. Claire. Clearly pregnant, 6 months, maybe 7. Standing in front of a building he didn't recognize. A plain entrance, a wooden sign, a rural road behind her. She was looking slightly off camera, not at whoever was taking the picture. Her expression was something between determined and afraid. Marcus turned the photograph over. Nothing written on the back. He looked at the building again. At Claire's posture. At the clear, undeniable shape of her. The clinic, Ashworth, had been a very different kind of place. He knew what it looked like. He had been there. The building in the photograph was not Ashworth. Mara said she only wanted him to carry it. But she left a photograph that carries something much heavier. If you felt that ending, you're not alone. Share your thoughts below, and subscribe so you're here when the next chapter changes everything you think you know. Marcus stared at the photograph for a long time before he did anything at all. Claire. Clearly pregnant. Standing in front of a building he didn't recognize. He had assumed, the way you assume things when the alternative is too large to hold, that the photograph was from before Ashworth. A different pregnancy, maybe. A different time. Something that could be explained away if he just thought about it hard enough. But the date stamp in the corner wouldn't let him do that. It was printed right there. Month, day, year. 7 months after the Ashworth appointment. Marcus set the photograph down on the table. Picked it up again. Looked at the building behind Claire, the wooden sign, the plain entrance, the rural road. He had been to Ashworth. He knew exactly what it looked like. He had spent years trying to forget it. This was not Ashworth. He was in Gareth's office by 8 the next morning. Gareth took one look at Marcus's face when he walked in and didn't ask how he'd slept. He just took the photograph, held it under the desk lamp, and started working. It took him 40 minutes. "Linden House," Gareth said. "Maternity home. Rural Vermont, about 3 hours outside the city." He turned the computer screen to face Marcus. A small, plain building on a quiet road, the same sign, the same entrance. It closed 4 years ago. State licensing issue. They weren't large, maybe 20 residents at a time, mostly private referrals. Marcus looked at the screen. At the building. At the road behind it that matched the road in the photograph. "The date on the photo," Marcus said. 7 months after Ashworth, Gareth confirmed. He said it quietly. Like a man who understood he was saying something that would change the shape of a person's life. The room went completely still. Marcus did the math. He had done it the moment he saw the date stamp, and he had refused to finish the calculation, and now he finished it. He sat with the answer for a moment that felt much longer than it was. She had gone to Ashworth with him. And then she had not gone through with it. And she had not told him. And she had gone somewhere else instead, alone, 3 hours from the city, to a quiet maternity home on a rural road, and she had continued the pregnancy without him, because he had already made it very clear what he wanted. What he needed. What his career required. He hadn't asked her what she wanted. He had assumed. He had spent 8 years calling it a mutual decision. "Can you get records from Linden House?" Marcus asked. His voice was steady. He didn't know how. "Already tried." Gareth turned back to his screen. "Most of it's gone. When they closed, a lot of the paper files were destroyed. But not everything." He pulled up a scanned document. Intake records from the last 2 years before closure were partially digitized. Incomplete, but they exist. He found Claire's name in under 10 minutes. Marcus looked at the record. Admission date. A note about private placement arrangements. A lawyer's name, a firm Marcus recognized immediately, though it took him a second to place it. Old letterhead. His father's handwriting on the original referral document, scanned and barely legible. His father. Marcus's father had died 3 years ago. They had not been close in his final years, distance, busyness, the ordinary drift of men who don't know how to say what matters. But his father had known about Claire. His father had known about the pregnancy. And his father had said nothing. Not once. Not in 20 years. He had handled it quietly, the way his father handled everything he decided Marcus didn't need to deal with. A child was placed, Gareth said. He wasn't looking at Marcus when he said it. Private arrangement. No adoption agency. The lawyer handled everything directly. Marcus put both hands flat on the desk. Boy or girl, he said. Gareth checked the file. Boy. Marcus sat in his car for 20 minutes without starting the engine. He thought about Mara sitting across from him at the kitchen table. Her steady voice. Her quiet refusal of his money. I want you to carry it. The way she carried it. He had believed her. He had believed the story completely, Claire's grief, the years lost, the death at 34. He had believed it because it was painful and human and because he deserved to carry something and the story gave him something to carry. He had missed the thing underneath it. Mara hadn't come to deliver a message. She had come because something had happened. Because there was a child somewhere, and something had gone wrong, and she had run out of other options. He picked up his phone. Called her number. It rang through to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. The third time, she picked up on the fourth ring. Silence for a moment. Then her voice, careful, unsurprised. I wondered how long it would take you. Marcus closed his eyes. Tell me. She did. His name was Daniel. He was 8 years old. He had been in foster placement for the last 3 years, through a private arrangement that had kept him off the standard system, managed by a lawyer Marcus now knew was connected to his father's firm. Mara had found him 14 months ago, which was why she had come looking for Marcus, which was why she had taken the nanny position, which was why she had said one word in an empty boardroom and then waited. She had been trying to reach Marcus the only way she could think of. What happened to him? Marcus said. Mara's voice was steady. The steadiness of someone who has had to keep it together for a very long time. 6 weeks ago, she said, Daniel disappeared from his foster placement. Marcus didn't speak. Someone moved him, Mara said. I don't know who. I don't know where. The placement records were altered after the fact. I only know because I had been tracking him for months and I noticed the gap. Her voice tightened. He's 8 years old, Marcus. And 6 weeks ago, someone decided to move him and made sure there was no paperwork trail left behind. Marcus stared through the windshield at the empty street. He thought about Lily, 7 years old, pressing her nose against a boardroom window to look at the city lights below. The paper crown. The chocolate cake. The question she had asked Elena that he hadn't been able to answer, are you going to leave like my mom did? He thought about a boy he had never met, somewhere he couldn't find, who had spent his entire life inside a careful arrangement designed to keep him hidden. 6 weeks, Marcus said quietly. 6 weeks, Mara said. The line stayed open between them. Neither of them spoke. Outside, a car passed on the street. The city moved around Marcus like it always did, indifferent, enormous, unaware. Somewhere in it, or somewhere outside it, was an 8-year-old boy who didn't know his father existed. And someone had just made sure he was harder to find. That number, 6 weeks, lands differently when you understand what it means. If this story has its hooks in you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're here when the next chapter reveals who moved Daniel, and why. Marcus called Mara back within the hour. Not from his office. Not from his car. He called from the stairwell of his building, standing between the 14th and 15th floors where no one walked and the cameras didn't point. He had spent enough years running a company to know which corners were unobserved. She picked up on the second ring this time. Tell me everything, he said. Not the version designed to make me look. Everything. A pause. Then, how much time do you have? However long it takes. Mara had been searching for Daniel for 3 months before she ever walked through Marcus's front door. She had found the trail through Claire's things, a set of documents in a fireproof box that Claire had left in Mara's apartment 18 months before she died. Not with instructions. Just left there, the way you leave something with someone you trust when you don't want to say out loud that you're afraid you won't be around to keep it yourself. Inside the box, the name of the lawyer. A placement record. A photograph of Daniel at age 5, standing in a backyard Marcus didn't recognize, squinting into the sun. Mara had followed the trail quietly. She was careful, she'd learned to be careful, and for 2 months, she made real progress. She found the foster family. She confirmed Daniel was alive, placed, managed through a private arrangement that sat completely outside the normal system. Then, 3 months ago, the trail hit a wall. A legal entity, Mara said. Private holding structure. I couldn't get a name, couldn't get a registration. Every document I found pointed back to it and then stopped. Like a locked door with no handle. Marcus was already at his laptop when she said it. He had pulled up the lawyer's firm the moment she gave him the name, an old firm, a quiet firm, the kind that existed specifically to do work that other firms declined. He knew the name because he had seen it once, as a teenager, on papers in his father's study. He had never asked what it was for. He pulled the entity's registration now through a legal database he paid 6 figures a year to access. It took him 4 minutes to trace it. 3 shell companies. Each one dissolving into the next. At the end of the chain, a holding trust, established 19 years ago, currently active, currently funded. The trust's founding name was his father's. Marcus sat back in his chair. 19 years ago, Marcus had been 22. Still in school. His father had built the trust 7 years before Claire, before Ashworth, before any of it. The trust had been waiting, already in place, when everything happened. His father hadn't scrambled to hide Daniel. He had simply used the structure he already had. That was worse, somehow. The efficiency of it. The quiet, organized patience. Someone is still running it, Marcus said. Yes, Mara said. Someone who knows Daniel exists. Someone who has been making decisions about where he lives and who manages him for years. And that person moved him 6 weeks ago. Marcus spent the next 2 hours pulling company records. The trust had a registered administrator, not a name, a role title, the way old trusts were sometimes structured. But a role had to be filled by a person. And that person had to be someone his father trusted enough to hand a 19-year obligation to. He thought about the men his father had trusted. There weren't many. His father had been careful with trust in the same way he was careful with money. He didn't spend it where he didn't have to. One name kept surfacing in the documents. Quarterly filings. Administrative correspondence. A signature that appeared again and again at the bottom of instructions related to Daniel's placement. Raymond. Marcus's CFO. 23 years with the company. His father's man, before he was Marcus's man. The person who had clapped Marcus on the shoulder after the acquisition closed and said, "Your father would have been proud." Marcus picked up his phone and called Raymond's direct line. It rang. And rang. And rang. He called Raymond's cell. Voicemail, immediately, the kind of immediate that meant the call had been declined, not missed. He called Raymond's assistant. She said Raymond had taken a personal day. No, she didn't know when he'd be back. No, he hadn't mentioned any plans. Marcus put the phone down very carefully. Raymond had gone unreachable the same afternoon Marcus started pulling documents. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a man who had been watching for exactly this moment and had known, somehow, that it had arrived. He was still at his desk, very still, when he heard Lily in the hallway. She was supposed to be watching a movie in the living room. He could hear that she'd paused it, the sudden absence of sound, and then her small feet on the floor, coming toward his office. She stopped in the doorway. He looked at her. She looked at him, his face, the open laptop, the scattered papers, the way he was sitting that was different from how he usually sat. "You look scared," she said. "I'm okay." She didn't look convinced. She came in anyway, the way she always did when she decided a room needed her. She stood next to his chair and looked at the laptop screen without understanding any of it. Then she said, "Do you have another little kid somewhere?" Marcus went very still. "I heard you on the phone," she said. Not defensive. Just explaining. "You said 8 years old, and where is he, and stuff." He looked at his daughter. 7 years old. Paper crown. Chocolate cake. The one good, uncomplicated thing. "I might," he said. Honest, because she had asked honestly. Lily thought about this for a second. Her face did several things at once. "Is he nice?" "I don't know. I've never met him." She nodded slowly, taking that in. "Then, I hope he's nice." She said it like a decision. "He could be in my room sometimes. I don't mind." She went back to her movie. Marcus watched the empty doorway for a moment. Then he turned back to the papers. Raymond hadn't just been managing the trust. He had been receiving instructions. Marcus found them buried in the administrative files, quarterly directives about Daniel's placement, signed by Marcus's father, transmitted through the trust's internal correspondence system. Where Daniel lived. Which household. What name to use in the records. How to keep the paperwork clean. Dated, organized, continuous. Marcus checked the most recent one. Then he checked the date again. Then he sat back and felt something cold move through him that wasn't quite fear and wasn't quite anger but was somewhere in the space between. The most recent instruction was dated 11 months after his father's death. His father had been dead for 3 years. The instruction was 2 years old. The signature at the bottom was his father's, the same careful handwriting, the same pen pressure, the same loop on the H. But his father had been dead for 3 years. Marcus called Mara. "Someone forged my father's signature," he said, when she answered. To move Daniel. 3 times in the past year. Whoever it is has been using my father's name to manage this child, to move him, to hide him, and the last move was 6 weeks ago. Silence on the line. 6 weeks ago, Marcus said again. His voice was quiet now. Very controlled. The same week you took the job in my house. Mara didn't answer. That's not a coincidence, Marcus said. And you know it isn't. So tell me what you're not telling me. The line was open. He could hear her breathing. She didn't speak. And the silence told him more than any answer would have. Someone forged a dead man's signature to move an 8-year-old boy, and Mara knows more than she's saying. If you felt that silence at the end, you already know this story isn't finished. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you're here when the truth finally comes out. Mara met him at a coffee shop 12 blocks from the house. Not his suggestion, hers. Neutral ground. Public enough that neither of them would do anything they couldn't take back. She was already there when Marcus arrived, sitting at a corner table with both hands around a cup she wasn't drinking from, and when he sat down across from her, she looked like someone who had been deciding something on the drive over and had only just finished deciding. Marcus put his phone on the table between them. The screen showed a photograph of the forged signature, his father's name, dated 2 years after his father's death. Mara looked at it. Then she looked at Marcus. How long have you known, he said. That you found it? She exhaled slowly. Since this morning. Raymond called me. Marcus went very still. Raymond called you. He's been watching for signs that you were getting close. He called to tell me the timeline had moved up. She set her cup down. He thought I was still on his side. The coffee shop moved around them, orders called, chairs scraping, ordinary afternoon noise. None of it touched the table where they were sitting. Start from the beginning, Marcus said. The real beginning. Mara had found Claire's fireproof box 14 months ago, 3 months after the funeral. She already knew about Daniel. Claire had told her in the last weeks of her life, when she was too sick to keep protecting everyone and finally started letting Mara in. But the box held more than documents. It held a trail. Claire had spent the last year of her life quietly, carefully piecing it together, the trust, the placement records, the lawyer, the quarterly instructions. She had done it from a hospital bed, between treatments, using what energy she had left. Not out of bitterness. Claire had gotten past bitterness years before. She had done it because she found something that frightened her more than dying. Someone inside Marcus's company had found out about Daniel, Mara said. Raymond. He'd known about the trust for years, your father told him everything, trusted him completely. And at some point, Raymond stopped managing the trust the way your father intended. She paused. He started seeing it differently. As an asset. Marcus was quiet. If Daniel's existence became public at the right moment, during an estate dispute, a board challenge, anything involving Marcus's assets, a biological child nobody knew about could complicate everything. Muddy the waters. Create leverage. Mara's voice stayed flat and factual, the way people talk about things they've had too long to be shocked by. Raymond wasn't planning to use Daniel immediately. He was keeping him in place. Maintaining access. Waiting for the right moment. He moved him 6 weeks ago, Marcus said. Because I got too close. He moved Daniel before I could reach him, and he covered the trail using your father's signature, documents he'd been holding on to for exactly this kind of situation. She looked at Marcus steadily. He's been preparing for a long time. Marcus stood up. Walked to the window. Came back. He was thinking about his father, about a man he had understood, or believed he understood. A man who had built a quiet architecture around a secret and told himself he was managing it, containing it, keeping everyone safe. A man who had trusted Raymond with the most sensitive thing he had, and had not lived long enough to see what Raymond did with that trust. Claire knew about Raymond, Marcus said. He wasn't asking. She figured it out 8 months before she died. She didn't have proof, not the kind you could use, but she knew. Mara folded her hands on the table. She couldn't go to the police. She couldn't go to a lawyer without creating exactly the public situation she was trying to prevent. She had one option. You, Marcus said. Me. Mara looked at him. She called me in October. 2 months before she died. She told me about Daniel, about Raymond, about all of it. And then she gave me one instruction. The coffee shop felt very quiet suddenly, even though nothing around them had changed. She said, get close to Marcus before Raymond does. Warn him. Not with words, she knew you well enough to know words wouldn't be enough. She said you needed to find the truth yourself or you wouldn't believe it. Mara's voice shifted slightly, something careful behind it now. She said you had always been like that. That you needed to walk to the edge yourself before you could see what was there. Marcus said nothing. She didn't send me to hurt you, Mara said. She sent me to protect you. The woman you left, the woman you have been carrying guilt about for 8 years, spent the last months of her life trying to make sure Raymond couldn't use your son against you." The word son landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Marcus sat back down. Mara reached into her bag. She set an envelope on the table. Small, white, slightly worn at the edges, the kind of worn that came from being carried for a long time. Marcus's name was on the front. Claire's handwriting. "She wrote it 2 weeks before she died," Mara said. "She gave it to me and said to use my judgment about when. I've been carrying it for 14 months. She pushed it across the table. I think now is when." Marcus looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then he picked it up. Opened it. The letter was 2 pages. He read the first page without expression, or rather, with the controlled expression of someone maintaining composure through something that was costing them a great deal. He turned to the second page. He read one line. Then he stopped. He set the letter down, face down on the table, and pressed his hand flat against the back of it. He stared at the table surface for a moment that stretched long enough that Mara looked away, to give him the privacy of it. He didn't read the rest out loud. He couldn't. Mara's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Something in her face shifted, not relief, exactly. Something closer to the feeling of a long-held breath finally released. "Gareth found him," she said quietly. Marcus looked up. "Daniel. He's at a group facility. 40 minutes north." She turned the phone so Marcus could see the address. He was moved there 6 weeks ago under a different name. That's why the trail went cold. Marcus was already reaching for his jacket. "There's something else," Mara said. He stopped. "Gareth sent me the file." There was a photograph tucked inside it, not in the official paperwork, just placed inside the folder. Someone put it there before the file was transferred. She hesitated. "It's a school picture. A girl. 7 years old, gap-toothed, wearing a yellow headband." The air went out of Marcus's chest. "Lily." It was Lily's school picture. "There are 4 words written on the back," Mara said. She read them from the screen, slowly. "He deserves a sister." Marcus stared at her. "Claire's handwriting," Mara confirmed. "She gave it to me 18 months ago with instructions to send it when Daniel was close to being found." She set the phone down. She planned this. All of it. Long before she died, she was already building the path. Marcus sat with that for a moment. The photograph. The 4 words. An 8-year-old boy in a facility 40 minutes away who had been told his parents didn't want him, carrying in his file a picture of a sister he had never met, sent by a woman who had died before she could give him anything else. He stood up. Picked up Claire's letter. Folded it carefully and put it in his inside jacket pocket, against his chest. "Let's go," he said. Claire built all of this from a hospital bed, for people she loved and a man who had hurt her. If that hit you the way it hit us, share your thoughts below. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're here for what happens when Marcus finally walks through that door. The facility was 40 minutes north, just like Mara had said. A low brick building set back from the road. A parking lot. A painted sign. The kind of place designed to look calm from the outside, because what happened inside was complicated enough without the building adding to it. Marcus sat in the car for 60 seconds before going in. He had built a company from nothing. He had closed deals that moved markets. He had stood in rooms full of powerful people and never once felt like he didn't belong there. He had no idea how to walk through that door. He got out of the car. The woman at the front desk called for a staff member, who led Marcus down a hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner and microwave meals. He could hear a television somewhere, a cartoon, the fast bright sound of it. A boy laughing at something. Not Daniel. He didn't know that yet, but he would learn later that Daniel didn't laugh easily. Not at cartoons. Not at arrivals. They brought Marcus to a common room. Chairs, tables, a bookshelf with broken spines. A window with afternoon light coming through it. Mara was already there. She was sitting on a low chair near the window, and across from her, curled into the corner of a small couch with his arms crossed and his eyes on the door, was an 8-year-old boy. He had Claire's coloring. That was the first thing Marcus saw. The same dark hair, the same quality of stillness, that particular way of going quiet when a new person entered a room, reading the situation before committing to anything. Daniel looked at Marcus. His expression said, "I've seen people walk through that door before. They always want something. They always leave." Marcus stopped a few feet away and didn't push forward. He understood, without anyone telling him, that this was not a room where you could afford to move too fast. Mara said his name quietly. "Daniel. This is Marcus." Daniel didn't respond. He looked at Marcus the way children look at adults they haven't decided to trust yet, steady, measuring, giving nothing. Then he slid off the couch and walked directly to Mara and sat down next to her, close enough that their shoulders touched. She didn't make a production of it. Just shifted slightly to make room, the automatic adjustment of two people who had been doing this for a long time. Marcus watched it happen and understood something in one clean moment. Mara had been here before. Many times. Under a different name, probably, the staff would know her as a family friend, a volunteer, whatever story had gotten her through the door. She had been visiting Daniel for 2 years. She was the one person in his life who showed up and kept showing up, and Daniel's body knew it even when his face was still guarded. Marcus thought about Mara sitting at his kitchen table. Her resignation letter, placed on the table like it had always been there. The performance of leaving. She hadn't left because the confrontation was over. She had left because that was the next step in a plan that Claire had designed and Mara had been executing, piece by piece, for over a year. The resignation. The photograph in Lily's backpack. Marcus finding the trail himself. All of it had been arranged, not manipulated, but timed. Claire had understood something about Marcus that Marcus was only now starting to understand about himself. He had to walk to the edge before he could see what was there. Marcus sat down across from Daniel. Not too close. He put his elbows on his knees so he wasn't looming, wasn't performing authority, wasn't any of the things adults did in rooms like this that made children close further. "I heard you like building things," Marcus said. He didn't know if it was true. It was just something to say that wasn't about him. Daniel looked at Mara. She nodded slightly. "Legos," Daniel said. His voice was careful. Testing the air. "What's your biggest one so far?" A pause. Then, a space station. It had a docking bay. He said it like he was waiting for Marcus not to care. "How long did it take?" 4 days. "I had to redo the landing platform twice because it kept falling." "Yeah," Marcus said. "That happens." Something in Daniel's posture shifted. Not much. Just enough. Then Marcus asked, without planning to, it came out before he thought about it, "Do you know anything about me?" Daniel looked at him for a moment. Then, quietly, "You have a daughter named Lily. She's 7. Her favorite color is yellow, but she says it's blue because she thinks blue sounds better." He paused. "She has a hamster named Biscuit. He's fat." The room went completely still. Marcus looked at Mara. She was looking at her hands. Marcus thought about the fireproof box. The documents. The photograph in Daniel's file with 4 words on the back. He thought about Claire in her last months, sick and running out of time, putting all of it together with the care of someone building something they wouldn't be alive to see finished. Not a goodbye. Not a wound. A plan. She had sent Mara to protect Marcus from Raymond. And she had also sent Mara to prepare Daniel, quietly, visit by visit, over 2 years, for the moment when a stranger named Marcus walked through a door and needed to not feel like a stranger. Daniel knew Lily's real favorite color. Claire had made sure he knew. The arrest happened that evening. Gareth had passed the financial records to the right people 3 days before, and the investigators had been building quietly. Raymond was taken from his home at 6 p.m. He didn't resist. The CFO who had served 2 generations of Hale men, who had clapped Marcus on the shoulder after the acquisition and said your father would have been proud, walked out of his front door in handcuffs without saying a word. Marcus was still in the car on the way home when his lawyer called. "It's done," David said. "Raymond is in custody. The trust documents are being reviewed." "Good." A pause. "Marcus. There's something in the documents you need to know about." Marcus waited. "Your father, the original trust filing." There was a clause. Secondary provision, buried in the administrative section, not referenced anywhere obvious. David's voice was careful. "It gives the trust the authority to assume full legal guardianship of Daniel under specific conditions. If those conditions were met, Marcus, they could have removed Daniel from your reach entirely. Permanent. No contest." "What conditions?" "A formal claim of paternity filed by you. Within a specific window." A pause. The clock was set to start 4 weeks from now. Marcus sat with that. 4 weeks. If Raymond had stayed free, if the documents had stayed hidden for 4 more weeks, Marcus could have come forward, claimed his son, and triggered the very clause designed to take Daniel away from him. His own action would have been the weapon. His father had built the trap without ever knowing Raymond would be the one to set it. "Can it be challenged?" Marcus said. "Already working on it," David said. "But Marcus, you need to move first. Before that 4-week window opens. If you're going to claim Daniel, it needs to happen now, on your terms, not theirs." Marcus looked out the window at the city going dark around him. He thought about an 8-year-old boy in a facility 40 minutes north who knew Lily's real favorite color. Who had been told his parents didn't want him. who had learned not to trust arrivals, and who had still, after 20 minutes, told Marcus about the landing platform he'd had to rebuild twice. He thought about Claire building all of this, the whole hidden structure of it, from a hospital bed. Not for herself. For everyone she loved. For a boy who deserved a sister. For a man who didn't deserve protecting and got it anyway. "Tell me what I need to sign," Marcus said. Claire spent her final months not on grief, but on making sure the people she loved had a path forward. If this story has stayed with you, share what you're feeling in the comments. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're here for the final chapter, because the ending belongs to Daniel. The trust was dismantled on a Tuesday. Not with drama, with paperwork. Signatures, filings, a conference room full of lawyers who charged by the hour and spoke in the careful language of people whose job it is to make large things happen quietly. Raymond had cooperated fully once his own legal team explained the alternative. He gave them everything, the documents, the shell companies, the forged signatures, the plan. All of it, handed over in exchange for a reduced charge and the chance to spend his remaining years somewhere other than a federal facility. Marcus sat at the head of the table and signed where David told him to sign. He felt nothing dramatic. Just the clean, quiet click of something locking permanently into place. Daniel was safe. That was the only number that mattered. The board meeting was harder. Marcus had spent a week with David preparing for it, not to hide the Ashworth document, but to control how it surfaced. That was the only move available to him, and he took it. He walked into the boardroom and put the document on the table himself, before anyone else could. He explained, briefly and without asking for sympathy, what had happened 8 years ago and what it had cost. He did not make excuses. He did not offer the version that protected him most. He lost 2 board members by the end of the week. A third resigned quietly a month later, which everyone understood was connected but no one said so directly. He did not lose the company. He did not lose the acquisition. He lost some of the untouchable quality, the storm that couldn't be reached feeling that had defined Marcus Hale for 15 years. And standing in the elevator afterward, going back up to his office, he found he was not as devastated by that as he expected. It turned out that untouchable was a thing you built to protect yourself from other people's access. And he was starting to think that access, in the right hands, was not the threat he had always treated it as. He called Mara that afternoon. "I'd like you to come back," he said. "Not as a nanny. Something defined, a formal role, honest title, real salary. Whatever arrangement makes sense." A pause. "Lily asks about you every day. Daniel already knows you. And I could use someone in my life who isn't afraid of me." Mara was quiet for a moment. "Give me a week," she said. She called back in 3 days. The meeting between Lily and Daniel was arranged for a Saturday morning, at a space Mara had found, a community room, neutral, bright, nothing loaded about it. No pressure attached. Nobody told them what to say or how to feel. Marcus and Mara stood near the door and did not intervene. Lily walked in first. She was wearing a yellow shirt, her actual favorite color, the one she pretended wasn't, and she was carrying a tote bag that clinked when she moved, which meant Legos. She always brought Legos. Daniel was already there, sitting at one of the low tables, arms crossed in the way Marcus was starting to recognize as his default position in new situations. Watching the door. Reading the room. Lily looked at him. He looked at her. She put her tote bag on the table, reached in, and pulled out a half-built structure, something with towers and what appeared to be an extremely ambitious bridge. She set it in front of Daniel and studied it for a moment with the expression of someone confronting a genuine architectural problem. Then, without looking up, she said, "You can be in charge of the supports. They keep falling and I think it's a weight thing." Daniel looked at the structure. Then at Lily. Then at the structure again. "You need a wider base," he said. "I know, but then it looks wrong. Only from the front. From the side it's fine." Lily considered this seriously. Then she pushed the tote bag toward him. "The flat gray ones are in the middle." He uncrossed his arms and reached for the bag. Marcus watched from across the room and didn't say a word. He counted 11 minutes before he stopped watching the clock, because by then it didn't matter anymore. Lily had assigned Daniel a critical load-bearing role in her construction project without once asking if he wanted it, because Lily had never once in her life considered the possibility that someone might not want to be part of something she was building. She had her mother's confidence. He had always known that. He was only now seeing what a gift it was. The evenings got easier slowly. Not all at once, nothing real happened all at once. But they got easier. Daniel ate dinner with them twice a week, then 3 times. He stopped sitting with his back to the wall after about 2 weeks, which Mara told Marcus quietly was significant. He and Lily developed a dispute about the correct method for building Lego staircases that became, somehow, a regular and passionate ongoing argument that both of them seemed to enjoy enormously. He still went back to the facility each night. The legal process moved at the speed legal processes moved. Marcus had learned patience, or something that functioned like it. On a Thursday evening, about 3 weeks in, Marcus was in his office when he heard small footsteps that weren't Lily's. Lily ran. Daniel walked, measured, deliberate, like he was still deciding with every step whether the destination was worth it. He stopped in the doorway. Marcus looked up. Daniel came in and stood next to the desk. He looked at the bookshelves, the desk lamp, the framed photograph of Lily that Marcus kept turned toward him so he could see it from his chair. Daniel studied that photograph for a moment with an expression Marcus couldn't fully read. Then he looked at Marcus. "Was she nice?" he said. "My mom?" The office was very quiet. Marcus had spent 8 years managing the story of Claire, softening it, shaping it, keeping it at a distance where it couldn't reach him. He had a version of her, he told himself. A version that made what he had done survivable. He put that version down now. He looked at Daniel, at Claire's coloring, Claire's stillness, the quality of quiet that this boy carried the way his mother had carried it, and he thought about a fireproof box. About quarterly visits over 2 years. About 4 words on the back of a school photograph. About a woman who had spent her last months building a future for everyone she loved, including the man who hadn't deserved it. He took a long time. When he answered, he told Daniel the truth. Not the truth that made Marcus look better. Not the careful version. The real one, about who Claire was, what she had done, how much she had loved, and how much she had built, quietly and without credit, for a boy she would never get to meet. What Marcus said is not the part that matters. What matters is Daniel's face afterward. The careful, guarded, arms-crossed boy who had learned not to trust a rival stood in the lamplight of his father's office and went very still. Not the closed stillness of someone protecting themselves. A different kind. The kind that happens when something you have been waiting a long time to hear finally arrives, and your whole body needs a moment to believe it's real. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. After a moment, he turned and walked back toward the living room, where Lily was loudly demanding that someone come look at what she had built before it fell down. Marcus stayed in his chair. He reached into his inside jacket pocket and took out Claire's letter. He had read it many times by now, all of it, not just the one line that had stopped him in the coffee shop. He knew it by heart. He held it for a moment. Then he folded it carefully and put it back. The audience spent 10 chapters asking what Marcus's secret was. The answer was never the secret. The answer was what Claire did with her love after the secret, the quiet, stubborn, extraordinary thing she built in the dark, for people who didn't know they needed it, because that was simply the kind of person she had been. And now it was still standing. 10 chapters.